Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Socially Radical Guitarist. So the song you heard just now was What About Me from Snarky Puppy, the album We Like It Here. So interesting thing, like they have plenty of YouTube views, 11 million on that song because of how good it is. Only 370,000 Spotify plays. And that's kind of the dynamic, the musical consciousness of the people. So anyways, in order to get into our political segment, we're going to be talking to Dustin James. Dustin James, he has his own YouTube channel, and he does regular Facebook podcast, like live shows. He also is a member of the Center for Political Innovation. Seems like a radical political think tank in the United States. So welcome, Dustin James, and good to have you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
All right, so just get into it. Kind of your political evolution. What happened? Okay. How did you end up becoming a communist?
All right. I've gone over, my political evolution in depth. If you just Google Dustin James Anti-Imperialist America, you'll be able to find my YouTube channel. And I have several videos where I've gone over this again and again, and I'd like to give you the short course. My family left upstate New York when I was about 5 years old. We were basically economic refugees. My dad couldn't find a job. I blame a lot of it on NAFTA, the trade bill. This was around 1995. NAFTA passed in 1994. And what put the Southern indigenous farmers in Mexico out of business also put a lot of family farms out of business and allowed, the farms to further monopolize and destroyed a lot of rural economies. Northern Appalachia, you call it, around Ithaca, nothing but hay fields, dairy farms, very rural area. My family, we were a family of 7 then, ended up being a family of 8. My little brother was born. At one point, we lived in there was 8 of us in a 2-bedroom trailer down a mile-long dirt road in rural North Carolina. And North Carolina is usually a broke state. And we were broke folks in North Carolina. And, it was pretty hard. It was hard growing up, and saw a lot of stuff. At the same time we moved here, a lot of folks from Mexico moved here. So a lot of my friends ended up being from Mexico. And I was actually partly raised by undocumented immigrants from Mexico. And, when I was in high school, my position, I was the dude that was against the war and for immigrants. I played a large bass horn and marching band, and I refused to play the Star Spangled Banner until the United States treated immigrants correctly and stopped invading Iraq. And this was in a small rural town near a military base. And I got a lot of hate. I got a lot of hate for that. I was kind of like a Christian anarchist. I don't know where I got to it. Some of my dad's teaching, some of my own. And I put up notices on the doors of all the churches in the area. I wanted to be a preacher saying, it is blasphemy to support the wars, and you're against the teachings of Jesus Christ. Not a single church responded to me, but the sheriff certainly did come to my house. And then I eventually got to college, and I met communists in the anti-war movement. And they have the most scientific and most accurate description of the world as it is. And any person that, is practical and wants to change things will eventually become a communist if they're honest. I mean, that's basically how I see it. And the people that trained me were, direct descendants. These guys were in their 70s. It was a direct line to the original Communist Party USA. So I'm more of an old school communist. That's how I was trained that way. I actually was really repelled by today's left. It's more like cultural rebellion than it is building workers' power, in my understanding. I was taught show up on time. I was taught dress nice. I was taught respect the working people, respect the working class, and put the effort in and organize. And I've been bringing that old school socialism. I eventually, I kind of dropped out the movement for a bit, started driving trucks. I often referred to as the Marxist-Leninist truck driver. I've been to all 48 states. I've been to Canada, driving big rigs. I've done flatbed. I've done van. I'm currently a local driver doing pneumatics. Um, I started this podcast about a year ago. I do a personal video blog on my show. I call it Anti-Imperialist America. And I also hooked up with a friend from Australia who is a Marxist-Leninist union organizer. And we do a weekly news/study on Saturday nights. I also hooked up with my I didn't really know him in person, but I've always known him online. Comrade Caleb Maupin. I'm a big fan of his, and I started working with him at the Center for Political Innovation. Center for Political Innovation is a anti-imperialist think tank that's just getting its start in the United States. And our slogan is a government of action to fight for working families. We're trying to rewrite the socialist propaganda and understanding and get out directly to the working class masses.
Excellent, excellent. That sounds like quite the political evolution, and you've been very busy. Definitely, you see that you've been very busy. Going back to the CPUSA, like I realize you were trained by some members of the CPUSA. What is your attitude towards that?
They split off. They split off. The
Hmm.
people that trained me split off because there was issues with revisionism. Essentially, they've been supporting the Democratic Party for the last several decades, and I'm in the camp on the left that sees the Democratic Party is the main obstacle of progressive progress and organization. Big shout out to the great late Glenn Ford, who recently passed, who was a huge inspiration on the party to train me and myself, and a huge inspiration for other influence I have, particularly in the Chicano nationalist movement. And shout out to Ernesto Ayala, Partido Raza Unida.
Okay, so you're definitely not pro-Democratic Party, I see. So the people that split off, that sounds like the Party of Communist USA, right?
No,
are those the ones that split off?
There's a history of splits. I can't get into it. I can't even say what party I was a part of because they were underground and I can't out them. So it gets into
that's some hardcore stuff, man. Wow.
Okay, but there is many of the organizers at Center for Political Innovation, which is a think tank, which allows, it's a think tank. Therefore, we don't care if you're in a party. We don't care if you're not in a party. You can come and contribute, and you can come and be a part and learn from and share our material. Regardless, we're not a competition to any party. We're hoping to be a resource for the entire leftist movement. Now, there are many members of Party of Communists in our organization, many of the ones I respect. Shout out to Comrade Keaton Mansfield, which is a 7th generation cattle farmer from Southern Illinois, who is currently involved with the John Brown Volunteers, a full-time outreach organization based in New York City, which is the outreach team for Center for Political Innovation, who's also a member of that party. And there's a few members that are around that.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a good, an interesting new strategy, having a political think tank, because think tanks tend to have a lot of influence on the US government. I mean, for different reasons. Like considering, the penetration, I think Caleb has a relatively large profile for the left wing. So I think that helps to kind of push the organization a little bit. How widespread have the ideas been with the Center for Political Innovation in the United States?
Caleb's a good friend. He often makes an analogy of his work to the Velvet Underground and rock and roll music. Not a lot of people listened to or bought CDs of, or back then vinyls of the Velvet Underground, but everybody, else who was a musician listened and was influenced. And kind of my probably a better metaphor that I would understand is kind of like Dead Prez. Dead Prez didn't have, the revolutionary rapper, he didn't get the album sales, but everybody that was in the music business listened to and respected the work, and some even like straight up ripped off parts of it. So that's it. Think tanks are basically what controls U.S. policy. I mean, they're all right wing, big money, Democrat. They got deep pockets, and a lot of these so-called pro-democracy protesters and color revolution stuff are direct results of U.S. think tanks all over the world. And it's very obvious. They'll take like 5 or 6 people, and they'll create policy and political understanding and discourse, and it works. I mean, we ain't got the money, but I mean, we're actually fighting for the people. The think tanks out there, trying to convince the people to support the enemy. We're trying to convince the people to support their own interest. So I mean, we got powerful enemies to go against, but I think we, the people, can go right to the people. As Mao said, from the masses to the masses. And the slogan at Center for Political Innovation is out of the movement and to the masses. Because a lot of the synthetic left are, hooked to the new left, and they're very isolated in what we call the protest cage. It's always the same group of 100 leftists. They go to the same left rallies and never actually get out their circles or having any sway in the larger political discourse. And we're trying to change that.
Excellent, excellent. So the synthetic left, have you run into opposition from what you call the synthetic left to the Center for Political Innovation? Have you run into very thick opposition from that mainstream left that has such a huge hold on US politics? I mean, there are 48 million members in the Democratic Party, last I checked.
Yes, and Caleb Maupin is basically canceled everywhere he goes. He's called a Nazbol and all kinds of horrible things. I was canceled for being transphobic for some reason because somebody went around. There's these professional Nazi hunters, and if you disagree with them, they share your profile and call you a bunch of mean things. It's these wrecking balls. They're horrible. If you go on the CPIUSA.org website, there's a tab for conferences. And I emceed/chaired a conference called Cancel This Webinar. And I also organized it. And my friend Ernesto Ayala de Partido Raza Unida was on there. And you got synthetic left, so-called Latinx, trying to cancel, people who have direct descendants to the revolutionary Chicano movement, who call themselves Chicano, who support Aslan. They're trying to tell them that's Mexican hegemony and trying to cancel them. And that's like a revolutionary movement. So it's not just us that's having this. And then we had the folk singer on there, David Rovix. And David Rovix has been, he's been targeted. He's been told that he is a anti-Semite for his supporting the Palestinian cause. And he's had gigs canceled, real financial, losing financial stability from gigs getting canceled, attacks on the internet, papers left outside his house and threats. He talked on there. And we also had the comrade Dan Kovalik, who's a great author, was actually in Syria at the time, doing election work in Syria. And he sent be an election observer, showing that, all the stuff the West is saying is a lie. But he sent a live video. Well, he sent a recorded video, which is on that conference, Cancel This Webinar, to promote his book, Cancel This Book. And he was our main speaker. and it's a real problem. I mean, there's people that don't want to build, and they just want to tear down anybody who's doing anything.
Mm. Um, yeah, I mean that it was, kind of disconcerting to hear that you were called a transphobe. Was there
Yep.
was there a root behind that? Any basis for that, or?
No, I support the trans rights movement. I support everybody's human rights and dignity. I think it's absolutely shameful that people can lose their jobs or face physical threats because of orientation of whatever cause. Now, my emphasis is the class and national question. I'm a classic Marxist. My emphasis is the class and national question and organizing as much people and power as possible, and that position doesn't sit right with a lot of people for some reason.
I think, well, there's a lot of money in the United States, and I think if you put money in the right places, you'll have people speaking out in favor of, you know. But yeah, I see the troubles that you have shown to have been in, and it's good that you're showing resistance. Um, are there any upcoming like events for the Center for Political Innovation that you want to bring to attention to our listeners?
Right, we used to do monthly webinars, and I organized a lot of those, and you can go and relook at those. But right now, we're focusing on the John Brown volunteer outreach team, and they're on the streets in New York City every day. If you want further, you can subscribe to Caleb Maupin. You can go to the website and join. And you can also subscribe to me on YouTube and like my Facebook page, Anti-Imperialist America, or join the Facebook group Working Class Revolt.
Okay. Yeah. So like I'm sure not every media outlet is hostile to you. I'm sure a lot of them are, but I know you've mentioned Black Agenda Report, but are there other allies that have been supportive of your initiative that you also want to bring attention to our viewers?
Um, I mean, the Center for Political Innovation is just getting off the ground. It's being spearheaded by Caleb Maupin. My show is very underground. I think I've almost got 1,000 subscribers. I work extensively with Telly Jaguar, which is also another media group inspired by Black Agenda Report, which are Chicano nationalists, and I have them on all the time. My biggest influences would be the one anti-imperialist media in the U.S. would be Mint Press, would be the Gray Zone. I'm kind of blanking, but those are two. Those are two of the big pillars here.
Oh yeah. Gray Zone's actually very, very good. Max Blumenthal definitely has a lot of prestige. I mean, he also did he participated in a talk in Canada. I think it was shortly after the NDP and the Greens voted along with the Conservatives to say that China was committing a genocide. So it was important to have him there to talk about issues and to speak along with our party members um, and the Chinese consulate in Canada. So yeah, those are like these are very big issues. I mean, it definitely looks like the propaganda against China is ramping up. Looks like a lot more sorties are going towards Taiwan. Like it's a very dangerous time. Um, what were your attitudes on, like there are a lot of definitely dramatic political developments this year, especially early on with the January 6th riots. What would be your take on that? Because I think there's an ongoing probe in the House of Representatives over that.
I mean, I think my position is to focus on the material conditions and the struggle of workers. Um, I take a very unpopular position on the left that, the main danger has been the more efficient and powerful Democratic Party. Trump was largely controlled opposition, in my understanding. And the Democrats will yell and yell and yell and holler about Trump and and try to impeach him, attack him to make themselves look good, but they won't address, Trump's fascist policies because they are complicit in them and they are carrying them out more effectively. I mean, Biden, there's still kids in cages on the border. There's still makeshift refugees on the other side, and now they're blatantly attacking Cuba with these Bay of tweets and all this stuff going on. I mean, I think people need to be quiet about the sixth and start looking at, the evictions coming up. And I'm also a little skeptic about the sheepdogs, like Cori Bush, who's out, she's out there in front of the Capitol, but to me, that's a lot like public relations. I don't think she's actually trying to organize it around that issue. I think if we want to organize around the issue, we need to be building power directly in and from the community. And and I think if you're going to say the right thing, but then get nothing accomplished, and then tell people to vote for the people that are causing the problems, you're not a solution to the issue.
I think that's quite an indictment on the CPUSA, but that's a pretty informative statement to be making. Now, so you see that fascism. Your view is that fascism is being implemented more efficiently by the Democratic Party because they're. Is that correct?
I have a very strict definition of fascism. I go off George Dimitrov's definition, which is fascism is an oppressive, repressive is a horrible, horrific, repressive state used to maintain capitalism. And it's usually carried out by the stronger wing of the capitalist, which is the monopoly capitalist. It is the brutal suppression by the monopoly capitalists themselves. Now, I don't think the Democrats or the Republicans are fascist, but Hitler would be envious of the amount of mass chaos and destruction and death that this imperialist system is able to carry out. I think the main enemy today is imperialism led by US imperialism, and the Democratic Party is the stronger, more effective wing of that political apparatus.
So, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people would agree with you on that, especially considering the fact that millions are facing eviction. What is the CPI planning to do to organize around that issue, and what are their contingencies if they fail and mass evictions do end up taking place in the United States?
Well, I mean, right now we're simply an educational organization. We'd like to expand. We're kind of like building the ideological basis of what we're promoting, which is similar to the 1930s, 1940s Communist Party. And what they did was they had, anti-eviction brigades where if one person was getting evicted, the whole neighbor would show up and stop them from being evicted. And I think that is what we need to do. I mean, we're nowhere close to even having the mass ideological understanding and culture of solidarity to support that. So we're trying to just get that first step in of building a mass culture of solidarity.
Okay. So do you have any final thoughts to our viewers? Because I think we're about, closing in on the time. Final thoughts about the CPI and the next steps about the organization and what you would like our viewers to and our listeners to know?
Check out the website, cpiusa.org. Subscribe to my channel. Just Google Dustin James, Anti-Imperialist America. I think if I got to leave a political message for the listenership here it would be just get out and talk to your neighbors. Go talk to your neighbors, talk to your coworkers, be an image for social justice and scientific socialist understanding. Just spread the culture of solidarity. Each one teach one, revolutionary practice and revolutionary education. Just make make it a bigger conversation, get more people involved, and address people's economic concerns. Don't go up to them and be like, you racist, you sexist, you blah blah blah. Just be like, hey, the banks are messing you up. You're about to get evicted. They're not paying you right on the job. On my weekly show, Working Class Revolt, we do, the practice of the early 1930s, 40s Communist Party, which is we have a labor update at the beginning of our show. And we talk about the economic conditions of our community and that we personally face. And I think that's what we got to get people around and talking to each other. We got to be socially distant, they call it, but it's more like physical distance. One of my comrades, Matt Cedillo, Chicano poet, says it's physical distance, not social distance. You gotta talk to people and find out what their concerns are and organize around them.
That actually sounds very similar to the mass line that the Bolsheviks operated on when they were organizing before the Russian Revolution. So that's actually very good advice for our viewers and our listeners. So now we're out of time, so we're going to have to conclude. We're going to have the outro, and then we're going to have the song that Dustin James picked. Dustin James, what is the song that we're going to be closing with?
So he asked me to pick a song, and I picked one of my favorite songs by Johnny Guitar Watson, "A Real Mother for You."
All right.
And it's, all right.
A Real Mother for You. It's the eponymous album name as well.
Yeah. Real Mother for You. But anyway, now one of my trainees introduced me to that song, and if you listen to the lyrics, it talks about economic exploitation. It's interesting, this is from the funk community, particularly the African American community, which was really the start of neoliberalism. And the police repression, the people losing their jobs in the era of globalization that's now affecting white America started against our African American brothers and sisters, in the cities in the 1970s with crack cocaine, police repression, and all of that. And we take a lot of leadership from that.
Excellent thing to hear. All right, so with that, we're going to conclude. Thanks for coming on the show, Dustin James. And that's the end of the show. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy it.